For many centuries, smallpox has devastated humanity. One out of 3 died from it. Sometimes the survivors were left disfigured or half-blind. In 1715, Lady Montagu from England suffered an episode of smallpox that severely disfigured her beautiful face. Her brother died of the illness a few months later. In 1717, Lady Montagu's husband was appointed ambassador to Istanbul. A few weeks after their arrival, Lady Montagu wrote to her friend about the method of variolation used at the Ottoman court. She discovered that variolation was widely practiced in Turkey and was considered safe and effective. In 1718, she ordered the embassy surgeon, Charles Maitland, to variolize her 5-year-old son. The procedure consisted of making a small puncture with a lancet on the arm and introducing fluid taken from smallpox pustules from patients who had mild cases of the disease. Upon their return to London in April 1721, Lady Montagu had her 4-year-old daughter inoculated by Dr. Charles Maitland in the presence of physicians of the royal court. The practice spread rapidly at the court of London, among aristocrats and the military. In the same year, variolation will be used in Boston during a serious epidemic of smallpox. The treatment was expensive, only the rich and the British military could benefit from it. Benjamin Franklin also campaigned for accessible inoculation to the poorest. With a population of misinformed settlers and scary stories, anti-inoculation movements arise. Montcalm arrives in Quebec in 1756. He knows about the variolation practice from the British. But he does not believe that the inoculation is beneficial and appropriate for the native or French-Canadian population. In April 1775, at the start of the War of Independence, the British were immune to smallpox, while the Americans and the French had little exposure to it. On June 27, 1775, the American attack to the north began, and in a propaganda offensive, letters from Congress were circulated throughout the province, promising freedom from their oppressive government. On November 13, 1775, the Americans captured Montreal. But surprise, the French Canadians remained mostly loyal to England. In December, Quebec is under siege. For months later and after 2 failed attacks, a smallpox epidemic affects more than half of the Americans. George Washington declared, "The smallpox is 10 times more terrible than the British, the Canadians and Indians together." This was the cause of our hasty retreat from Quebec. During their retreat, General Benedict Arnold set fire to the Senneville fort and ordered the sacking of the Church of Sainte-Geneviève. Sacred vessels are desecrated. This in retaliation to the British for allowing the French to practice their religion and to use their language. 110 years later, in 1885, Louis Pasteur invented the vaccine against rabies. Louis Pasteur's technique consisted of developing an attenuated form of the disease in the laboratory. In the next 100 years, a multitude of vaccines will be created. In the 1920s, a diphtheria vaccine saved the lives of thousands of children. But some part of the clergy and people believe that divine healing through prayer is as good as vaccines. Unfortunately, in 1930, in the small village of Sainte-Geneviève, in the suburbs of Montreal, an epidemic of diphtheria raged. More than 22 young men died from it. Here is the testimony of Laurent Wilson, the son of one of the village doctors at the time.
Ça se passait comment un peu la vie au collège à ce moment? Ben, on appelait ça le collège, mais dans le fond c'était une école, mais gérée ou administrée par les frères de Sainte-Geneviève,
qui à ce moment-là avaient une autre maison à la place du Société actuel. C'est une maison qui ressemblait à l'école de Sainte-Geneviève, un peu plus grande par exemple.
Vous avez connu les deux?
Les deux,
ah, oui?
Oh, je me rappelle. Même celle-là.
Celle-là, vous parlez du Scolastica?
Je parle du Scolastica, celle qui était là. Il y avait beaucoup de fer Saint-Croix, là.
Oui.
Puis ils ont eu une épidémie folle, hein, parce qu'il n'y avait pas rien pour les prémunir contre la diphtérie. Alors, 22 sont morts dans le poste de l'année. Mon père n'était pas heureux. Hein.
C'était votre père qui était médecin?
Qui soignait pour ça.
Oui, oui.
Mais il n'y avait rien contre ça. Mon père en parlait longtemps après. Hein.